welcome once again. My name is Jason. This is Empower Volusia, and you're listening to Common Sense. Believe it or not, that's kind of interesting that we have common sense here in this country today. It's sometimes, it's just not there. And well, you know what? Let's start out this show here with a quote from the late great Mr. Ronald Reagan.
There you go again.
That's right. There you go again, folks. You may ask, why did I start this with a direct quote from Ronald Reagan? Well, because the lamestream media and the members of the Do-Nothing Party, also known as the Democrats, are once again singing the impeachment song as if they can't get over their elections here. Donald Trump won the election, folks. Maybe it's just, who knows, maybe it's time for them just to wake up. Wow, that's a heck of a rooster. I shouldn't have had him in here when I smacked him upside the head. But anyways, here's your wake-up call. Robert Mueller has had his day on the Hill, and he spoke to Congress, and he really didn't speak at all. I mean, you see, I watched the congressional hearings from the beginning to the end, and after, well, not really to the end, to about six and a half hours of this thing. And you see, I watched that, and I don't know what I really expected, but I'll tell you what I got. I know what I got was a real waste of 6 hours of my life that I will never, ever get back again. It was a complete and total waste of time. All that aside, what did we learn from the so-called investigative hearing? Well, nothing new at all. Let me see. Here we got this one right here. Yeah, I kind of do my own board work here, folks. So in his opening remarks, there's nothing new at all that he said. In his opening remarks, Mr. Mueller stated the exact findings of his report. And here's a little sound clip from Mr. Mueller and his opening remarks.
First, our investigation found that the Russian government interfered in our election in sweeping and systematic fashion. Second, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
Straight from the horse's mouth. Now, that is directly out of the mouth of Mr. Mueller. And what more can we say? I mean, he found that there was no intervention to the Trump campaign that they accepted. There's no collusion, period, the end, cut, dried. We're done. Or so you would think. But what about the obstruction of justice? Well, here's what Mr. Mueller said about the obstruction of justice.
Third, our investigation of efforts to obstruct the investigation and lie to investigators was of critical importance. Obstruction of justice strikes at the core of the government's effort to find the truth and to hold wrongdoers accountable. Finally, as described in Volume 2 of our report, we investigated a series of actions by the President towards the investigation. Based on Justice Department policy and principles of fairness, we decided we would not make a determination as to whether the President committed a crime.
So, what does that mean? Well, that means he did not make a determination. But he also goes on into his report there about saying, he is not exonerated either. Wait a minute, exonerated? What the heck is exoneration? So he did not make a decision on that. Maybe that's because there was nothing there. But wait, there is more. Representative Radcliffe from Texas, he really ripped into him. He really did. And this was early on, and when Mr. Mueller was really fresh. Let's be realistic. He's up there in age. And he was up and asking his questions. And to be honest, this sets the tone for pretty much the rest of the way the day went here.
Now, your report, and today you said at all times the special counsel team operated under, was guided by, and followed Justice Department policies and principles. So which DOJ policy or principle sets forth a legal standard that an investigated person is not exonerated if their innocence from criminal conduct is not conclusively determined?
Can you repeat the last part of that question?
Yeah. Which DOJ policy or principle set forth a legal standard that an investigated person is not exonerated if their innocence from criminal conduct is not conclusively determined? Where does that language come from, Director? Where is the DOJ policy that says that? Let me make it easier.
Go ahead.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot, but this is a unique situation.
Okay, well, you can't. Time is short. I've got 5 minutes. Let's just leave it at you can't find it because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist. The special counsel's job, nowhere does it say that you were to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or that the special counsel report should determine whether or not to exonerate him. It's not in any of the documents. It's not in your appointment order. It's not in the special counsel regulations. It's not in the OLC opinions. It's not in the Justice Manual. And it's not in the principles of federal prosecution. Nowhere do those words appear together because respectfully, Director, it was not the special counsel's job to conclusively determine Donald Trump's innocence or to exonerate him because the bedrock principle of our justice system is a presumption of innocence. It exists for everyone. Everyone is entitled to it, including sitting presidents.
Wow, that was pretty powerful. He really pretty much tore into Mr. Mueller because Mr. Mueller made a statement in his document that is not a legal basis. And as we now know, the special counsel was supposed to find if there was an issue. And if there was no issue, I can't find an issue. Nothing wrong with that. But you know what? We come to find out here during his opening remarks, Mr. Zebler, who was the attorney sitting to his immediate left, Mr. Zebler was actually running the day-to-day operations of this. Now, Mr. Zebler was also the attorney of record for Hillary Clinton during her, shall we say, the email issue. We won't go down that road again, but maybe later on we will when they decide to produce that investigation. But right now, that's who he was. Now, this guy, let's be realistic. If he's running the day-to-day operations, he's hand-picking and choosing. This guy does not like Donald Trump. Doesn't like him for anything. So here we are. Now we got an attorney that's running the show on a day-to-day basis, and Mr. Mueller's not even there. To be honest with you, folks, Mr. Mueller did not write this report. He didn't. After listening to this thing for hours and hours and hours, the real thing that I got out of the whole gist of this matter is very simply this. His staff wrote the report, handed it to him, said, here's your report. You know, we didn't find any collusion, which is not really a legal term, but we didn't find that the Trump campaign, we really can't put anything on them to connect them to the Russians. But we did find that there's, this obstruction of justice, even though, and Mr. Mueller admitted this, even though he was not slowed down or stopped for 1 second by the president, they're saying there was an attempt. Trust me. If Donald Trump, the president of the United States, wanted to shut down Mueller, he could have done it in a skinny second. And being the person that Donald Trump is, he wouldn't have given a hoot. But he knew it would be political suicide. So everything he's always told everybody was just do what they ask. That's it. And he admitted that. He said, and they turned over 1 million pages of documents. They turned over staff and people. And, he did what was asked of him, except for show up, because that's executive privilege. He doesn't have to. And, but it's ridiculous that, he tried to stop this thing. Now, if he wanted to stop this thing, he would have stopped it a long time ago. But he let him play it out. Now, all this thing is, now the statements, so after 8 hours, so to speak, of what did we hear really from Mr. Mueller? Well, here's the other things we heard. Statements that were said that were like, I cannot swear to that question, or I cannot answer that question, I cannot answer that, I'm unable to speak to that, no comment, etc., 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 etc. That was another broken record. So now you know. that is, if you live under a proverbial rock somewhere in the United States, but you have internet, what has happened and what was said in a nutshell? It was a waste. Every American that tuned into the Mueller show, because it was everybody, all the Democrats were saying, oh, we'll make this like the Mueller movie. Don't wait for the book, wait for the movie. Well, guess what? It was a very sadly, severely disappointing movie. There were no bombshells. There were no gotcha moments. Nothing that the report did not publish. As a TV series, it would have been a total flop. And you know what? Every news media outlet, CNN, NBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, all of them, even Fox, said the same thing. That was a waste of our time to even broadcast it. And now they're sorry. So the question we now have is, where are the Democrats during this? Really, I'm asking, where were the Democrats? Because I asked because Mr. Nadler, he had a comment after the hearing, which I find very interesting here. So here's Mr. Nadler's comments.
Today, the American people heard directly about what the special counsel investigation uncovered as to Russia's interference in the 2016 election and the president's cooperation with it and obstruction of justice. Mueller made clear that the president is not exonerated. Mueller found evidence of obstruction of justice and abuses of power by the president. The report said the president could be indicted for obstruction of justice after he leaves office.
Okay, he could be because he would be a private citizen. That's a no-brainer there. You're trying to build a mountain out of a molehill. Mr. Nadler, where the hell were you? Because I thought Mr. Nadler was up on the dais. I could have sworn he was the chairman of the Judicial Committee there. Apparently, he was in some other dimension of reality because, well, that was not what was discussed. Nothing he said. And folks, let me break something to you. Let me just tell you the real truth here.
You can't handle the truth!
The Russians, as far as the Russians' interference in our elections, they've been doing it for several decades. Let me rephrase that. Anyone that thinks the Russians have not been trying to interfere in our elections and our democracy and our republic, well, along with the Chinese and really any other socialist government, as well as ISIS and the Taliban and Iran, and the list goes on. Well, my friends, if you don't believe they've been trying to interfere in our elections, you are truly naive. And ever since the creation of the internet, it's actually made it a lot easier to try to interfere. But I will say this about the citizens of this great country. We really do not make our voting decisions based on some stupid Facebook posting, some email, I get inundated with garbage every single day, and you know what I normally do? Delete. Do you know what else? Mailers, they come in. Every candidate is sending me a mailer. To be honest with you, the real interference in our elections or the attempting to sway voters is actually a bigger problem right here on our own shores, and it's within our own parties. See, as I've said before, almost every candidate will lie to you just for your vote. But hey, you know what? They call that politics. It's just ridiculous how much garbage you get in the mail. I've gotten so many flyers and so many things. And you know what? If people are making their decision on who to vote for because of a Facebook posting, then they're not doing their job. They're not exercising that sacred right called voting. And if you don't do your own, I'm going to say it, if you don't do your own damned research, you're a fool. See, when I do my research, and I have no quabbles about this, I was one of the first people to say, you know what? We've had, for the past 240 plus years, politicians running this country. It's time to have a businessman, somebody who knows how to handle money, somebody who knows how to do this job and negotiate. Donald Trump is the perfect person for the job because he's not part of the insiders. Every single politician that's been elected to office has had the same agenda as every other politician that's been elected to office. But now you throw this guy in here. He's shaking it up, folks. You got to be happy that, hey, wait a minute, he's bringing to light the issues and the things that need to be fixed. I was one of the first people to jump on the Trump bandwagon. I really, really was. And I was actually ridiculed about it. I said, no, trust me, I'd rather see a businessman there than a politician. Why did I not vote for Hillary Clinton? Well, because of all of the things that she has done in the past. You know, I did the research. I've looked at everything. I did the research. It took days and weeks to find this stuff. And it's not that hard. You know, and for me, to be honest with you, I think the biggest nail in her coffin was when she destroyed all those emails. And yes, she did. You can't lie about it. She did. She admitted it. She destroyed the BlackBerries. She bleach-bitted her drive. I mean, she just destroyed all of her emails that were classified government documents. And she thought she got rid of them all. But you know, the real funny part is, some of them were left on Anthony Weiner's laptop, and that's sitting at the Department of Justice, and they're looking through it. Yeah. And there is no statute of limitations on that. So that could be actually a problem for her in the very near future. But anyways, let's get off this broken record, folks. If you're out there and you pass this on to some of these Democrats, they really need to get off it, because you're not going to impeach the President of the United States. Let's be real. You got a little over a year, about 14, 15 months now before the presidential election. Well, the House of Representatives, according to Article 1, Section 2, Paragraph 5, they'll choose their speaker, and they shall have the sole power of impeachment. All that means is they get to bring the charges. That's it. So we got a Democratic-led, and this is why impeachment won't work. All right, you're going to bring the impeachment charges. The Senate will hear it, because the Senate does the trial, not the House. Get that in your brain. It's in the Constitution. The Senate shall do the trial. Now, a 50-50 split on a tribunal, who is required to go in and break the split? The Vice President, who is the President of the Senate. So there you go. And are the senators going to impeach the president? Not when you have, well, most of the Democratic senators are out running around trying to be a president. They're trying to run for president. And personally, I think they should resign from their position in government. If you're going to gallivant around the countryside doing all these big speeches and campaigning and all that, you're not home. You're not at the office doing your damn job. You can't vote by proxy. It has to be your vote. So if you're out campaigning to be the president and you're a senator or representative, you need to resign your job so that somebody else can be appointed by your state legislature to fill that position while you're off playing, I want to be the president. And if we passed that law, made that law, geez, maybe we wouldn't have so many crazy socialists out there running around. And yeah, they're socialists. Well, yeah. But anyways, and according to Article 2, Section 4, the President, Vice President, all civil officers of the United States, all civil officers to include House of Representatives, senators, bureaucrats, all the people who work in the government, shall be removed from office on impeachment for and convicted of treason, bribery, you ain't bribing Trump, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, and that was meant to be murder, rape, pillaging, and plundering. That's high crimes and misdemeanors. Attempting to, first things first, attempting to do anything in a court of law is very hard to prove. And that's all they said. In the Mueller report, he attempted And how did we have that evidence? From hearsay. Hearsay, which is also not admissible. Hearsay, huh? Yeah, this person told me this happened. That's not admission of a crime. Sorry, folks. I'm not a lawyer. I did study law in college for a short period of time. But oh well. So who knows? Maybe one day the Democratic, and I'm really pushing out for a hard one here, and we're pushing hard, but maybe one day the Democratic Party, they might just actually think and start using a little common sense.